I mean, you're super stinky too.
How do I get on here?
And then when we hit that,
Get up there.
So I
Go.
can't get one.
Come on. Go.
Let me out of one of these.
Well, you will be.
Should we tell Dan his mic's on?
all right.
All right. What do you think, Chris?
Let's do this thing. So, Mike, you've hit record.
I have.
Right, you want to mute everybody except for three of us there for now?
And remember, you guys don't have. If you guys are more than welcome to keep your videos on, but if you guys don't want to, you don't have to. Okay, you guys can hide your video.
You're hidden.
And if you want a more compact screen, you can hit do speaker view and just get mostly Rich here on your screen. So.
And if bandwidth really starts to suck, then everybody, if you get rid of your video, bandwidth is much better.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm good here. You guys can hear me, right?
Yep, you're good.
Great.
All right, let's do this. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for logging in tonight. My name is Chris. I am one of the board members for the New England chapter of BHA. The way we'll start is I'll talk a little bit about sort of the structure of the tonight, and then we'll get going. So basically what we'll do tonight is give all this time really to Rich. Before that, I'm just going to give a brief introduction to what BHA is for those of you who don't know. And then we'll start the conversation with Rich, and towards the end we'll have time for some Q&A. So, but again, we appreciate you guys logging in tonight. This is a great turnout. I know so many of us are familiar with Rich from Hunt to Eat or Boston Bow Hunter, all these places where he shows off these just drool-worthy wild game preparations. Before we get back to Rich, though, again, just want to mention a little bit about backcountry hunters and anglers. BHA is the sportsman's voice for public waters and wildlife, and public lands and wildlife. And as an organization, we have chapters all through the country. And in reality, we are actually the fastest growing conservation organization in North America, which is really exciting. We've had just tremendous growth, not just nationwide, but here in New England as well. And we kind of organize ourselves around a couple key issues. First off, access and opportunity, fair chase, public lands and waters, and then also public waters access. Here in New England, we're set up as a sort of a regional chapter. We have state leadership teams in each state. So we're involved at the ground level in each state and sort of organized around state leadership teams with leaders based in each state. So with that structure, it's a grassroots organization, and we're able to get stuff done and accomplish stuff and voice the concerns of sportsmen and women through involvement of our members. And so if you're interested in any of that, please check out backcountryhunters.org and learn more about the organization. Follow us on social media, Instagram, we've got a YouTube channel, Facebook group, all that kind of stuff. So that's all for BHA. I want to introduce Rich now. As I said, a lot of you guys already know who Rich is through his meals and through his photos on Instagram in particular, which I'm shocked to learn that is all done on an iPhone.
Filters. It's all about the filters.
Yeah, it's all about the filters.
Instagram filters. Right?
So Onyx ambassador, field staff, Onyx ambassador. We're going to let you do the talking for the people to really get to know you. And I think the best place to start, I guess, is like how you got into hunting and where this journey all began.
So first off, thank you guys. Thank the BHA, New England BHA. Thank you guys for even considering me for this. It's truly humbling and super excited to give everyone on here anything that I have. Hopefully, if you guys can come away with a little bit of this tonight, that's a win, right? Again, my name is Rich Malloy. I was born and raised in Concord, Mass. I have lived in the Boston, Somerville area for the last 12 to 13 years. I've been with Hunt to Eat for the last 3 or 4 years. I see a couple of my other Hunt to Eat ambassadors on here, Lindsay down there. And yeah, so hunting for me, I was introduced to the outdoors like most of you on here at a real young age. Some of my earliest memories are of me and my brother fishing at the Concord Rod and Gun, and my dad introduced us to that. And, that quickly turned into us shooting plastic bows at balloons with wooden arrows and all that fun sort of stuff. And there was just a natural, call it a linear progression through that into where I am now. Guy named Brad Stetson introduced me specifically to hunting itself. My dad introduced me to the outdoors, but one of his friends, Brad, really put hunting into my hands, taught me how to scout, taught me how to field dress, find deer shit on the ground, climb a tree stand, all that stuff. I still shake every time I climb a tree stand. That's never changed. But, it started at a young age, but it wasn't really, hunting wasn't handed to me by my father. The outdoors was handed to me by my father. And then what was really important was learning that having a mentor is what got me here, and I think that, I assume everybody on here, if you're watching this, you're probably a seasoned hunter at this point, but no matter what no matter how much knowledge you have or think you have, having a mentor is huge. And I have my mentors. I have my hunting mentors. I have my culinary mentors. There's one of them watching now, people who I'm always asking questions and, looking towards for advice. But you guys are going to hear me go on a lot of tangents tonight. I like running with this stuff, but it's important to me. But it's having a mentor is really humbling, and I don't know what my hunting and outdoor lifestyle would have evolved into if I never had that mentor. And I can't really stress that enough about, no matter where you are right now, looking up to somebody and having somebody teach you something new, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be deer hunting. It can be anything. It can be canoeing, kayaking, fishing for stripers in the flats, whatever. Having a mentor and having somebody teach you something new is really important. I hope that tonight I can teach you guys something new with wild game cooking. And I got to give a quick shout out to Hunt to Eat. Hunt to Eat has really helped me has provided me with a platform, and I've learned so much from our great community through those guys, and Onyx Hunt as well.
So like you said, your father introduced you to the outdoors, and then you had some people sort of show you the ropes in terms of hunting. I think for a lot of us, like the pursuit, the hunt is really important. The stories are really important, but the food is huge. Like, who was your mentor? What brought you to make that leap to the sort of like this really next level? Before the call, we were talking about cream of mushroom. We were talking about the ketchup. How'd that happen?
So this is really the most intimate part when it comes to hunting for me, is everything that happens after the hunt. I'm definitely inspired by my brother. He's a chef. Has been a chef for probably close to 15 years now, and pretty much everything I know right now comes from him. And I have a couple other close friends that are in the Boston food scene, who also as well have taught me a lot. Nate, who's watching right now. And when I was younger, I had no purpose for the meat. I was just hunting because that's what somebody taught me how to hunt. And I harvested my first animal at probably 7th or 8th grade. And at that point, I didn't have any skill. I didn't know how to field dress an animal. I didn't know how to skin an animal, how to turn a backstrap into a bone-in backstrap. I didn't know how to do any of that. So it was really just me harvesting an animal at a really young age, and then giving that meat away, or throwing away meat that now I cherish. and it's all about the evolution of your own outdoor knowledge, the evolution of, your outdoor skill, about your cooking skill. They're all tied in together. And, there was probably when I was in high school, maybe a senior in high school, I shot a huge buck, and I didn't get any of that meat. I gave a lot of that meat away because I didn't know what to do with it. And I still look back at that, and in my head, I'm thinking, what was I thinking? Why didn't I at least keep a shoulder or a shank or some bones or something? And the majority of it just went to the Concord Rod and Gun, which is great. I would love giving that meat away to people, but nothing ever even crossed my mind that I could actually do something with that. And then moving into the city and having my own kitchen and my own processing equipment, that's when things started to change. And then obviously when my brother's also a butcher as well, once he taught me how to break down an animal correctly, this was probably 10 years ago at this point, and make it just a simple dish with venison, that's when things really started to change for me. And living in the city and having access to high quality ingredients, things that are in season, local, fresh, and also being surrounded by great restaurants as well. I'm a self-proclaimed foodie. I love going out and eating. And a lot of that has inspired me to try to recreate those dishes with venison, which is a misconception. Just because it's wild game doesn't mean that you can't cook it like lamb or cook it like goat, or even beef for that matter, which kind of is a good segue into covering it with ketchup or cream of mushroom soup or soaking it in milk to reduce the gaminess. Would you ever do that with a piece of lamb or ribeye? Never. You would never do that. So my hunt is never ending, and it's every time I eat it, it brings me back to, climbing that tree stand or hearing frozen leaves crunching, and being able to talk about that and share that experience with the people who I'm choosing to eat this meal with, I think is just awesome, and so many times when I'm eating venison, I'm brought back to that moment of the harvest. And I'm being serious. I'm not just talking this up. I really, really do every time think about the hunt when I eat that animal. And I want to continue respecting that animal every time I eat it, whether I'm serving it to family, friends, eating it by myself, my wife, it doesn't matter. I'm constantly thinking about it. And it's the most that I can do. I mean, I killed an animal. I killed a large animal. That's emotional. That's intimate. I can't just, I don't know. It's all, to me, it's all about respecting the animal all the way through the end of the process. And that process doesn't end.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, that's great. It keeps that story alive. It keeps the,
yeah, absolutely.
And you share it with, like you said, your friends, your family. So you draw, sounds like you draw a lot of influence from just being in Somerville, having all these great ingredients, great restaurants, but it definitely seems like a lot of your food definitely kind of like follows that sort of the traditional lamb preparation. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
like
so,
what cultural influences?
Yeah, absolutely. So some old world flavors, if you think about like flavors of the Middle East, right? Like people in the Middle East, whether it be Turkey, Georgia, Lebanon, Pakistan, they've been cooking wild animals, wild game, goat, lamb, animals that have that gamey sort of real lean flavor to it for much longer than modern American cuisine, which is just French fries and chicken Parmesan, you know what I mean? And so when you have ingredients that come from those areas of the world, they really, really lend themselves well to wild game like venison, even turkey, the wild turkey. I've never eaten like mountain goat in the Midwest, but I'm sure that would translate well into that as well. But those flavors, they work so well together. Spices like clove and cinnamon and juniper berries and star anise, these old world flavors. And I cook a lot. I'm inspired by Turkish cuisine actually, and a lot of my dishes are derivatives of meals that I've had at Turkish restaurants in Boston that were made with lamb. And I'm eating that dish. I'm thinking, oh my God, like this would work perfectly with venison. And because of the skills that my brother and my other chef friends, Nate, those people have given me, I'm able to recreate that dish. I can eat a dish from a restaurant with lamb and I immediately go to venison, and it just works. It clicks, you know? So yeah, I actually have some spices here that I'm going to share with you guys either now or later, but you know, like Baharat, you know, right there, right? This spice right here is, you know, you have cinnamon, coriander, nutmeg, cumin, cardamom, clove, black pepper, spearmint, you know. You don't see that at Applebee's, Chili's, the 99, you know, that doesn't go on a beef burger with French fries, you know. That's real old world cooking right there. That was made to go on lamb and goat and, you know, veggies and stuff, and it works well. It really does.
Yeah, that's great. Now I want to get back to that, and I want to get to the point of cooking these proteins, like talk about fire, talk about sous vide, all that sort of stuff. But before we get there, and I think a lot of us are really, we're here because we're interested in sort of, again, elevating our wild game. Like, what's our starting point? What are the basic things that we need? What should we be thinking after we get that deer? Let's start with that. We have a deer on the ground. We field dressed it. Where do we go from that? For some of us,
yeah,
that might be in the city, we might not have a setup where we can process that animal. Some folks rely on a game processor. Some people are able to do it at home. Like, talk a little bit about that from animal on the ground. We're dragging it back to the truck. What's the next step?
Right. So first off, if you can't process your own animal, no harm, no foul. I completely understand. I used to think like, oh, you know, you should only process your own animal, but I completely understand that some people just don't have the setup to do that. But I do encourage you that if there are people watching here today, that if you've never butchered your own animal, at least ask your butcher to save you either a whole hind quarter, a whole front shoulder, something like that, and just practice. You know, you can come away with something. You can at least, and if you can't figure it out, you can at least cook the whole thing, you know. But from field all the way into kitchen, I think that one of the biggest things, getting that deer cold. You know, a lot of times we're harvesting deer in October and even in early November when it's still kind of warm out, you know, getting that deer on ice. I know a lot of people like to dry age and hang their deer for 2 to 3 weeks. We don't have walk-in coolers here, or at least I don't have a walk-in cooler in Somerville. You know, I got a 200 unit building, 150 yards to my left right now. You know, I don't have a walk-in cooler in my backyard, you know, but getting that deer cold, trying to quarter it out, you know, you can age a deer in quarters, you know, if you have a decent amount of airflow and just a refrigerator. So you get the deer, you try to get it cold immediately, you quarter it out, and then from there, you know, you want to separate that animal into what I like to think probably 8 different parts, you know, from neck, 2 shoulders, rib cage, back straps, and 2 hind quarters. And then even within that, you have so many different cuts, right? So the neck itself, right? You can take that neck and you can turn it into burger, which a lot of people do, which is great. I mean, it's fatty. It provides a lot of flavor for that burger, but it cooks significantly better when you just tie it up and cook it whole. Yeah. You know, you can bone it out. You can cook it bone in. Like, we're not in an area where there's a lot of there's no CWD right now. And fingers crossed that never actually comes in, but you know, the neck is great. It pulls really well. So for people who like to make chili, just braising that neck in some venison stock, some wine, aromatics like chilies, pulling it apart, letting it fall apart, and then from there you can either like set it overnight and then turn it into your chili the next day, you know, which actually might be better. You can, I'm going to pull up a video for you guys in a second and show you how to debone a venison neck. And then working down the front shoulders, you know, for me, the front shoulders, there's not a lot of steak in the front shoulder. It's mostly grind, but there is a stake on the blade. If you have a big enough deer and you haven't shot through the shoulder blade, with a bow or a gun, you can absolutely, with a bow that's set at a high enough poundage, you can go directly through the shoulder blade. But there's those stakes most of the time. I mean, I'm shooting does and small bucks. Let's be serious. I mean, it's Massachusetts. We're not shooting trophy deer like you see in Iowa and Ohio, right? But that blade stake is going to be really small unless you shoot it on a big deer. So what do you do with that front shoulder? For the longest time, I was boning it out. I was turning it into grind, and through that process, I'm thinking to myself, there's so much sinew in here. There's so much collagen. There's so much great stuff. There's so much flavor, right? I don't want to just rip it off the bone and throw that shoulder blade away. I can turn that into stock, right? Or I can, take that shoulder, all that meat off the actual shoulder blade itself, tie it up, and then turn it into a roast the same exact way I would do with a neck, right? It has just as much sinew, has just as much fat.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you a question about the silver skin, the fat. Are you, let's say you're storing this are you leaving silver skin on? How are you dealing with the fat? Are you leaving any of that alone? Or are you dealing with that ahead of time before you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've gone back and forth. With backstrap, that's really the only cut, because backstrap is your big steak cut. That's your grilling cut. That's your quick cook cut, right? With backstrap, I've done it both ways. I've left sinew on and silver skin on before going into the freezer, and I've pulled it off before going into the freezer. I can't tell the difference. It's coming off either way, and I know some people say that it will become sour. I've never experienced that. So me personally, I actually leave it on because I actually think it's another protective shield against freezer burn. But you're always pulling it off a backstrap. I'm never cleaning. I'm doing very, very minimal cleaning of a front shoulder or a neck when it comes to butchering, right? And it's all about saving time too. I mean, if I can save time in that process, if I know I'm going to cook that shoulder for 6 to 8 hours, I don't need to pull that sinew and silver skin off. It disintegrates. It dissolves directly into the dish, and it increases flavor. It adds flavor back into the dish.
Sure,
right?
sure.
It really does, and it's awesome. And there's no point for me in getting super technical with, I need to remove this silver skin and pull this off of this ankle joint or whatever, that elbow. That especially in the front shoulder, you see a lot of nasty collagen, tight collagen in there, and people are nervous to mess with that stuff. So a lot of times they cut the blade right off, and then they toss that little shank because it's small, especially on a 110-pound doe. We shoot those all the time, right? Especially for meat hunters, right? I'm not a trophy hunter, I'm a meat hunter, right? So on those little front shoulder shanks, right? Those are tiny. You're not going to do much with that. And do you really want to sit there and clean that up and turn it into grind? It'll take you a half hour just to clean it up. Or you could braise it for 6 hours in stock and red wine and aromatics. Now all of a sudden it's falling apart and it's turning into barbacoa like this, which I'm hopefully going to be able to share my screen with you guys right now. Share screen, barbacoa. Can you guys see that?
Not yet. Oh,
How about
there you
now?
go. Yeah, yeah.
So that right there is a whole front shoulder. That's not grind. That is just whole front shoulder that was on the bone, braised in stock and red wine, ancho chilies, chipotle chilies, a little bit of star anise, some blood orange, bay leaf, a little bit of lime, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, salt, and you can put that into tacos. You can put that into, hell, you can make you can put it into enchiladas if you want. You can do whatever you want with that. All of a sudden, it's just great, fatty, stringy, pulled meat, and that is how you respect that animal. You don't rip it off and throw it into the garbage, right? You cook it, you eat it,
Yeah.
you share it with friends, Another dish I did with front shoulder recently was this one. You guys may have seen this recently if you follow me on Instagram. This is Barbacoa Tacos right here. That is Barbacoa Tacos with blood orange, sweet reaper hot sauce, some, that's either sour cream or labna. I don't remember. And then the green stuff is Zug, which just is a Yemeni hot cilantro-based hot sauce, right? And that right there is barbacoa. That's a front shoulder, you know? And that front shoulder, when I was done cooking that right there just fell right apart, you know? And I can't believe that we are only on front shoulder right now because I have a lot more, right? I mean, the front shoulder, I'm nervous to pull up a video of me pulling the bone out of the front shoulder, but it's incredible, you know. It reduces your butchering time. I mean, everybody here, I mean, quick show of hands. I mean, if you guys, everyone knows how to pull the front shoulder off of a deer, right? You literally just pull it, slice it, comes off. That's it. That's all you need to do. And then you can cook it. You get a big hotel pan, stock and red wine, and then it'll fall apart. You give it 6 hours at 275, 6 to 8 hours at 275. You literally don't have to put a knife to that silver skin. It'll fall apart. That bone, that blade will pull out like a pork shoulder. It's not too lean, you know. That's just a misconception. There are certain muscle groups in deer that are too lean, that don't need to get slow cooked. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are specific cuts that need to see a grill and be cooked quickly because they need to be eaten like steaks, you know?
So you brought something up that just reminded me, and I want to make sure we save time for questions. We've sort of talked about some sort of procedural steps and taking it through some preparation as well. What about tools? You mentioned a hotel pan. You know, that's not necessarily something that everybody has in their kitchen. What are your other kind of go-to tools? There was a bunch of questions that came in about, I want to start butchering. I want to set up my kitchen better. What are the basics?
So 2 knives, right? You need a boning knife and you need a breaker, right? Breaker and boning knife, okay? Breaker is your long curved blade. This is probably, I don't know, 10 inches maybe. This right here is going to be your butchering workhorse. This is a Victorinox breaking knife, okay? I'm going to do the majority of my off the bone butchering with this, right? It's long, it has really good leverage, and you can do long slices with this cut, with this blade. Super flexible, and they're cheap. You can get this on Amazon. Maybe, I don't know, $30. The key is to keep it sharp, though. That's the biggest thing. If you have a sharp knife, I don't care if it's a breaker or a fillet knife or a chef's knife. If your knife is sharp, you're going to be able to do wonders in your butchering kitchen. The other one I really like is a boning knife, a small boning knife. And this is a Williams boning knife here. It's really nice. It's kind of heavy in the back end. Blade is a little stiffer here, right? And I'm really using this to almost separate bones from muscles. Like, for instance, the hind quarter, the shank. You don't need a saw to pull the shank off. You can just use this. You know, work that tip into the kneecap and slice off all that cartilage, right? Great for pulling the tail off when you're skinning. Great skinning knife, even though I don't really recommend using a boning knife for skinning. Sometimes it's the sharpest thing you have. If you know, sometimes I'll use the same knife to gut and skin because I like my gutting knife. It just fits well in my hand. Really, it's all about whatever knife is your sharpest, you know. But this thing right here is great for skinning because it's super precise. I'll literally sit there like this and pull. You see how light I'm holding that knife? And I'm skinning with this. It's like holding a fork, you know. Yeah. But, you know, this knife is great. It's a total workhorse. Doing a lot with this off the bone, really pulling hind quarter shanks off the hind quarter, pulling the hind quarter hip socket out as well with this too. And then the breakers, once you get all that meat off whatever meat you have off the bone, say you're pulling backstrap off that isn't on the bone. If you want to pull a backstrap out, that's a perfect blade for backstrap. You know, you continue down and you finish that cut with the tip of that blade. Super flexible. Also a good knife to remove silver skin too, because of how flexible it is. If you want to remove silver skin because that bent blades or that blade bends like that. So having 2 sharp knives, right? Hotel pans. I think that my brother taught me this, having hotel pans. I have like 4 or 5 hotel pans that are like this big, and you might not know why you need them when you buy them, and you might think like, okay, this is stupid. Why do I have these stupid big metal pans? But then when you get them and you start using them, you're like, shit, okay, I need these, you know. And I didn't really know why. I do a lot of my big muscle group braising in hotel pans. Super important there. Plastic cutting boards, right? Not wooden cutting boards, plastic cutting boards for your initial butchering process. When you're doing your finer cuts, those nice wooden cutting boards are great. My wife's dad actually makes me custom cutting boards for this stuff, and it's amazing. But I usually use those after the meat has either come out of the freezer or I'm in the final stages of butchering. But the majority of your butchering should be on big plastic cutting boards. Parchment paper, butcher's paper, vacuum sealers. I know that there was a question that somebody brought in about vacuum sealing versus butcher paper and plastic wrap. I'm a vacuum seal guy when it comes to putting into the deep freezer. Friends have given me venison that have been wrapped in butcher's paper and plastic wrap, and it's really hard to defrost. It defrosts slowly, and then when the butcher wraps it up, sometimes they get it tucked into all those little crevices, and you're like trying to pull the plastic wrap off, and you're getting plastic stuck into these folded pieces of meat. And whereas if you can just get your hands on a vacuum sealer, they're cheap these days, right? And some bags, and unless you're, if you're shooting like 10 deer a year, that's a lot of time on a vacuum sealer. You might want to just quickly wrap it up and throw it. But
Sure.
At that point,
So
that you have a good processing unit.
before we get to the denaturing the proteins, that's like the heat, pans, any other things like that.
Yeah, it's cast iron pan. Good cast iron pan. I know that you guys see on my Instagram, like I'm doing all this fancy stuff, like crazy stuff with backstrap on the Traeger, on the grill, sous videing. A really good, high quality cast iron pan with a good searing oil, like a canola or a grapeseed. That is how you're going to cook 99% of your venison, right? Because you're eating your backstrap. You're either reverse searing it. There's so much that you can do with that cast iron. And every home, if you do not have a cast iron pan, you need to go online tonight and you need to get yourself a cast iron pan. That is your kitchen workhorse, okay? And the majority of the meals that you're going to cook are going to be in that cast iron pan. It doesn't need to be huge. I have many different sizes, but I find myself using the regular 12-inch the most, and it's versatile. You can reverse sear a pretty decent sized backstrap and then throw it onto your stovetop and then finish it off, right? So cast iron pans, hotel pans, a couple sharp knives, a good chef's knife. When it comes to knives, it's kind of difficult for me to recommend a specific knife for a specific purpose. What really matters is how sharp that knife is, okay? You should not be messing around with a dull blade because that's where you're going to get injured. That's where your food's going to actually, I don't like eating food where, you can tell that somebody's been chopping it up with a dull blade and, you have like let's say a scallion, for instance, and the whole thing is hanging on by a thread, right? Or get yourself a sharp knife, learn how to sharpen it or hire a professional to sharpen it. I used to take my knives to a woman down the street in Arlington, and she used to sharpen all my hunting knives for me. And then my brother taught me how to use a stone correctly and how to use a whetstone. And for the last 5 years or so, I've been sharpening all my own knives, and it's quick. I'll do that once every 2 months. I don't do it often. And in the hunting season, I do it before every butcher, before every hunt for the most part. If I've used it, I'll sharpen it up. But having a sharp knife, I don't want to recommend too many knives. Just have a sharp knife, whether it's a chef knife, paring knife, breaker, boning. Yeah.
So before we get to the questions, last piece is the heat. Now, I know a lot of people, this is where they really get nervous. And those people who've got just more experience just tend to not overcook. You use a Traeger a lot, so you're out there grilling, but you're also using the reverse sear. You're doing the sous vide. Is it by feel? Do you use a meat thermometer? Like, talk about that, because I think a lot of people get themselves like it gets in their head.
Yeah, no, that's great. I cook mostly by feel. If you ask me right now what the internal temp of a backstrap should be, I probably wouldn't be able to answer that. Maybe 140. Maybe one. I actually
too high.
Yeah, right. I think that cooking by feel for me is probably the easiest thing to do. Reverse searing is a great way to make sure that you get a perfect temp every single time. Remember, this is all subjective. Some people like having a really rare backstrap. Some people like having a more well done backstrap, and I'll show you here. I would call this, can you guys see that?
Yes.
That right there is a tried and true rare backstrap, right? That is probably sitting at 125 to 130 degrees, right? That is reverse seared for maybe a half hour at 180 to 200 degrees on smoke, and then a quick sear each side. That to me is actually a little too rare. I think backstrap is better off being cooked when it is a little bit more well done like this. Okay, this is probably more close to medium, right? And I can't stress enough the reverse sear with backstrap really helps you get that edge to edge finish. Right. You can see here how that red almost expands out a little bit. There is a little bit of gray on the outside because I let it go a little bit more. But this bone-in backstrap, I think specifically with backstrap, you want to bring that temperature a little bit higher because backstrap tends to be a little bit soft. It's not like the eye around in the hind corner, right? The backstrap is really soft in the mouth. It feels soft in the mouth, right? So I recommend definitely pushing that internal temp up a little bit more when it comes to your backstrap. Whereas the eye around in the hind quarter, that is a much tighter piece of meat, right? And you can cook that a little bit less because it's still going to remain a little bit more taut, right? Reverse searing is great, going by feel, using the palm test. Sous videing can work. When you sous vide, you render venison fat at a different temperature, and venison fat doesn't necessarily have this great flavor to it. It tends to be a little bit waxy. It tends to be a little bit gritty. So when that venison fat starts to render out a little bit, it doesn't have the best mouthfeel, especially when you pull it out and you finish it off and that fat starts to solidify back onto the meat. It doesn't have the best mouthfeel. So sous videing venison for me, I've kind of gotten away from it. I used to love it. And then I've noticed that it was tasting a little bit funky and I couldn't figure out why. And the same cuts I would cook on the grill or I would cook on the cast iron. I'm like, why is this better? It's because that fat is just getting that char, and you're cooking that fat instead of rendering that fat out, and into a liquid. So there's certain cuts, like for instance of the sirloin tip in the hind quarter, that big football that you guys see, right? I'm sure everybody knows that big football cut, right? That's a tough cut of meat to cook because it's so big, right? Perfect cut for a sous vide. Then you finish it on the grill, right? Or if you're skilled enough, you can cook it the whole time in an oven or something like that. I don't even take the risk. I'll just sous vide it. Right? I'm that lazy that I'll sous vide that big cut, right? Sous videing meat doesn't mean that you're a good chef, by the way. That just means you're a lazy chef. Sometimes I'm a lazy chef, right?
I always found it's good for entertaining.
It is great for entertaining. The timing of the meal, right? What's better? So
they see the dramatic part. They see that final sear and they're like, ah.
Right. So for people that don't know what a sous vide is, it's a cooking method where you bag your meat, right? And then you submerge it in water. Right? And that water has a consistent temp the entire time. And that water is really kind of slowly bringing that meat up to the exact temp that you want. So let's say I want my venison to finish at 140 degrees because I have a nice, beautiful bone-in backstrap, right? I want that backstrap to finish at about 140, right? I'm going to sous vide that to about 130 to 132. And then I'm going to pull it out of the sous vide, dry it off, and put it into my cast iron. And all I'm doing is getting color on that cast iron because it's already cooked, right? And the residual heat from the cast iron is going to spike that internal temp back up just a little bit, right? So that's what a sous vide is. It's an immersion water circulator, right? So You'll see it. Innova, Jewel, those are the two big brands that are making sous vide. Precision, I think it's called, maybe Precision Cooker. They make one as well, or Polyscience. I'm not sure.
There's a bunch.
It's fun. It's fun, and it's a luxury. It's not a necessity. It's a complete luxury to have, right? And it's fun.
So I want to jump into some of these questions, and there's a ton. There was a bunch of questions that came in on BHA, the New England chapter's BHA Instagram page, your Instagram page, Facebook, email registrations in the right now in the chat. Michael's been doing a great job feeding me some of these questions.
I'm not even looking at the questions because
don't look. It's what I think we're going to have to do is we're going to have to at some point follow up on some of these, and I'll give you some. And maybe these are things that you can address through your social accounts or ours. One of the ones that have come up a bunch of times, and we've talked about this before, and this is an important one: heart, tongue, liver. I would let you do your thing.
So I'm really big into two of we'll call them offals, right? So heart for sure, right? You want to pull that heart out. If I served you heart, you wouldn't know that it was heart until I told you it was heart. It is a muscle. It is an incredible piece of meat. I highly, highly recommend you guys save your hearts. I'm going to show you guys a picture that this is not mine. I have to give my brother credit for this one. That is a heart sliced, right? And what we did with that, we sauteed it in a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt, pep, and then we finished it with some balsamic vinegar at the end. And that was finger food, the same way that you would eat, like, I don't know, chicken wings or something. People are just dipping into that, pulling out nice big pieces of heart. Got to save your heart. Caul Fat, okay? Caul Fat is a little bit more difficult. Can you guys see me, by the way? Is my shared screen on?
You're back, yep.
Okay. Caul Fat is a little bit more difficult to harvest. And if you don't know what Caul Fat is that membrane, that sheathy, stringy membrane that encompasses the gut sac when you're field dressing an animal. It's that white, almost looks like a spider web. Caul Fat is a wonderful trick to have in the kitchen because you can wrap anything. You can wrap beef meatballs. You can wrap a pork shoulder. You can wrap a venison sirloin tip, backstrap, meatloaf. You can use it. You see a lot of people wrapping their venison meatballs in it, and that fat renders out back into the meat and will help create a more moist texture and more flavor as well. So Caul Fat and heart. Liver as well. The liver on a deer is huge, right? So if you can harvest the liver out, great for sausage, definitely. Or if you can eat it by itself, if you're into that, absolutely. You could make a liver pate with deer liver, although I've yet to meet somebody who has successfully done that. I'm probably going to reach out to a couple friends about that one because now I'm thinking about it. Not something that I would recommend vacuum sealing and freezing for a long period of time either. I would try to eat that quick. Same with the heart. Eat the heart quick as well. That should be one of the first things that you eat. Sausage, all of these, the stomach, tongue, whether you're doing tripe, you're doing liver, kidneys, that can all be turned into sausage, Some people harvest the blood too, which, again, I don't have the skill to do that. Maybe someday, but you make blood sausage out of the blood. But
all right, good, thanks. There was a question on this one I thought was pretty interesting. He asked, do you ever dry age any venison cuts using the umai or other dry aging bags?
No. So for dry aging, I do recommend doing a quick dry age before you vacuum seal. It doesn't need to be 3 weeks. It really doesn't. But getting that meat to actually lose a little bit of moisture before you vacuum seal it is going to really help that freezing process because that moisture within that cut can actually freeze and create a different mouthfeel and create a different flavor, right? So if you reduce a little bit of that moisture, condense your flavor, it's not going to be dry when you cook it. Don't think that by dry aging that you're getting a dry piece of meat. That's not how it works, right? But I do recommend, at least if you have a spare fridge or if you have room in your fridge, if your wife doesn't kill you during the hunting season, you take up the entire refrigerator with venison hindquarters and stuff. But I do recommend pulling the muscle groups apart, aging them for just a little bit in your refrigerator. There is a light fan moving in that refrigerator, and your refrigerator is set, I think, around 40 degrees, maybe a little bit lower than that. Probably, actually, I would think it would be probably 38. That's a perfect temp for a quick dry age. If you have, by the way, to answer the question, I've never used any of those bags. All my dry aging is done in my refrigerator. I usually age my meat for 3 to 5 days before I throw it in the vacuum sealer. If it's November, if it's cold out, if I know I'm going to get a stretch that is under 40 degrees, that is really, really important for aging. It has to be under 40 degrees, right? That above 40 degrees, that's where bacteria can start to grow. Has to be under. And you don't want it to freeze either. So you have to find that it has to be perfect conditions if you're doing it outside. And then for me in Somerville, I only have to worry about the rats, right? For other people in Western Mass, you might have a bear. I don't have bears running around out here. I only got rats and rabbits, right? So
One less rabbit.
quick dry age in the refrigerator before you vacuum seal it is will really, really help that flavor.
Okay, great.
The mouthfeel, it'll help create a little bit more nuttier texture. Yeah, absolutely.
Going in a different direction, canning venison.
Interesting. I've never canned venison. I know one of our Hunt to Eat ambassadors, Wade. I think Wade has canned venison. I've never done it. I'm super interested in it. But no, that's definitely not something I've never gotten into. That's that is like next level shit right there.
Yeah. So not all of us live in Somerville. Not everyone has 3 Lebanese restaurants within walking distance.
Right.
Cookbooks, must-reads, resources that we can kind of expand our knowledge.
Yeah. So, Spice by Anna Sortune. That's probably going to be the #1 cookbook for Middle Eastern cooking. Not specifically, it has nothing to do with venison, but it's called Spice, Flavors of the Middle East. Anna Sortune. I'll actually show you guys the book. I have it right here because I was expecting a question about this. So this is called Spice, right? Anna Sortune. Okay, she is like the mother of Turkish cooking and Middle Eastern cooking in the Boston food scene. And a lot of my inspiration has come from her restaurants. She has 3 restaurants and a farm in Massachusetts, and it's incredible. She's James Beard Award winner, multiple time James Beard Award winner. She's incredible. But again, those flavors lend themselves very well to venison. So, and obviously Buck Moose, Hank Shaw, what he has done for our community, what he has done for wild game cooking across the country, he is the beacon for wild game cooking. Look towards him. If you guys don't know him yet, you need to be a part of that community because he has really changed things in wild game cooking. Hank Shaw, Buck Moose, a lot of great information there. That's the book right there. I have to admit, I haven't really taken advantage of many of the recipes in that book. I'm more of a picture guy, so I'll like go through the book and I'll look at the pictures and I'll be like, I like that. I'm going to do that my way though, right? But it's a great for somebody who's a novice in the kitchen or even butchering. He has a great section on butchering the animal that I think is super helpful. And all of these recipes can be used not just for whitetail, but moose, elk, antelope, pronghorn, all that stuff, right? Fallow deer, red deer. I'm sure it's just meat. You could use bear as well. Why not?
Sure,
right?
Sure. A couple more questions. There was sort of putting a bunch of different questions together related to braising. Sort of what your process with braising, and then also there was a question that asking about if you've ever blended your braising liquid into a sauce or anything like that after.
Yes. Yeah. So okay. So I'm very interested in who asked that question because that is a solid technique right there. So you have your braising venison. To me, is the #1 way to cook it. Right. You have a whole venison shank, or you have or a whole shoulder or something like that. I'm actually going to share my screen with you guys again real quick. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
That right there is braised venison. If you guys are seeing that right there, that's shank. That's a whole shank. You guys see that? Let's play that one more time. That right there is a whole venison shank. That is the shank that you turned into hamburger this fall. You turned that into hamburger. You took 30 minutes and turned that into hamburger per shank. Don't do that. Okay, so wine, stock, aromatics like star anise, bay leaf, garlic, parsley, Parmesan rind, right? Tomatoes, anchovy paste, parsley, whatever. All right, right, almost like an Italian style braise. Okay, 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours into an oven with parchment paper and tinfoil. Usually when I'm doing bigger cuts, it's in the hotel pans or in a Dutch oven. If you know what a Dutch oven is, you can put it in a Dutch oven, right? When that's done, that's going to fall apart. But then you got all those juices, you got all those braising liquids in there. What are you going to do with that, right? Right into the Vitamix, everything. You've already pulled your meat out, and you have all these braising liquids with the tomatoes, the carrots, onion, celery, what we call mirepoix, right? That goes right into the Vitamix and then back into your pulled braise, and all of a sudden you have just the most ridiculous venison ragu, which, where is my venison ragu? I'll show you. I don't know where it is. Oh, it's right here. This is smoked venison ragu, right there. That was actually a dish that my brother and I did over the holidays, right? That is truffled venison agnolotti with a smoked venison ragu and a pecorino ricotta on top. That is venison. Is that meat in there is pulled venison shoulder with all the braising liquids back into it. And I think we put some maitake mushrooms in there too. But I get real passionate when it comes to whole shoulder braises and braising with wine and stock. You know, please, please, please save your bones and make venison stock. It's so easy. Carrot, onion, celery, bay leaf, garlic into a crock pot, 24 hours with all the bones you can get from your harvest, and just let it go. And then siphon it out, sift it out. And then you have stock. You make whatever the hell you want with it. It's great.
I just got a text message from my wife, who's watching this someplace else. She said, "You're making that."
Yeah.
So, anyways,
that is homemade pasta from my brother as well. Yeah.
Wow, excellent. Let's do one more question, and then I want to make sure we do the door prize. I want to be respectful of people's time here tonight. Let's see here. You talked a little bit about spices. You want to just elaborate on a few more of those go-to spices that you have?
Yeah. So I keep saying star anise. Star anise is these little guys here. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's just a little pod of yummy goodness, right? It sort of smells like licorice, right? That flavor right there is, to me, the best part about braising venison is in the winter on a Sunday when you're watching the Patriots, when you got a whole shoulder or some shanks going in the oven and you smell that anise, you smell that garlic. Star anise and venison are a match made in heaven. They really, really are. Get to know that spice. I really, really, really recommend using it. You use it whole and then you pull it out. You don't you could grind. Some people do grind it. I recommend just using it whole and then finding it during your braise and pulling it out before you serve. I really like that. Porcini powder for all you venison burger people, right? This actually might be shiitake powder now that I think about it. This is shiitake powder. Mushroom powder of any type. If you're not adding mushroom powder into your venison burgers, you are missing out, okay? Shiitake powder, porcini powder, definitely the way to go for venison burgers. And then Ras Al Hanout. This is another Middle Eastern spice right here, okay? Great spice, even for grilling, also for veggies as well. You know, if you're going to roast off some veggies, you put a little Ras Al Hanout in there. That is a tried and true Middle Eastern spice right there. You can find at most spice shops. I go to Curio in Cambridge. I don't know if any of you guys are local here. Curio has a lot of really, really high quality spices. But yeah, anise, Ras Al Hanout, porcini powder. Those are some really good flavors. Szechuan peppercorn as well. Szechuan peppercorns and venison are a great match as well.
Great. Hey, Rich, thank you so much. I mean, there's so many questions that have come in. Unfortunately, we just don't have time to get them all. I will give you these questions and sort of the transcripts of this, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to address those.
Yeah, absolutely.
In another form, or maybe we're going to have to do this again and sort of like hone in on something real specific.
Yeah,
but
a whole Q&A. We just open it up. Open up the discussion to everybody.
Yeah.
And hey, thank you guys so much, and I hope that I was able to give you guys a little bit of what's going on in here when I cook. I really think that this is fun, and being part of the Boston bow hunter community, being a part of the BHA community. I've met so many friends through the hunting community. It's great. And if I can share just a little bit of what I've been given to you guys, that's my goal, and follow me on Instagram at Rich Malloy 3 if you don't already, and shout, send me a question. I really wish I could stay here. I mean, and all of these, and I really do. And if you guys want to have a conversation, let's keep the conversation going online. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's great. Well, I want to announce the winners. I just randomly generated. We had a ton of people join in, and
what are the prizes, by the way?
So we've got three prizes. We've got thanks to Hunt to Eat. I refresh my memory. What Hunt to Eat was?
It's a $40 gift card.
Yep, the $40 gift card to Hunt to Eat. We've got a New England, actually, probably this one, unless Michael has some other BHA merchandise in his inventory, and also a Onyx membership.
So that's a big one.
Yeah, that's it's a must-have.
That's a big
here
one.
in the East. Yeah, so
no matter what you're doing, like that Onyx app, I am on that thing all the time. That is, like, for me, one of the best scouting tools. It really is.
Oh yeah, the fact putting in pins and all sorts of stuff. I mean, it gets a little bit overwhelming, all that data. But all right, so let's start with the Hunt to Eat. Congratulations to Chris Franks. Chris will get in touch with you. I'll have Rich get in touch with you for that. For the BHAT, Vincent Casalucci. Congratulations, and we'll be in touch with you there. Yeah, and for the Onyx, William Breslin. Congratulations,
Breslin.
Yeah,
awesome, dude.
So we have your login information. We have your emails, and we'll get you. We'll be in touch with you to get you those prizes. And again, thank you everyone for joining us here tonight, and especially to you, Rich, sharing your knowledge, your experience, and giving us all some inspiration. I mean, I'm already, everything in the freezer is pretty much accounted for at this point. Yeah. But I cannot.
This is just the beginning, man. We should do this again.
Wait till fall.
Absolutely. This was awesome. Thank you guys so much. And we're just scratching the surface with this stuff. Really, I would love to give you guys everything. I love helping people. I love talking about this stuff. I love learning this stuff. If you guys have a tip for me, send them over. I'm trying to get better myself. I'm not an expert here. So you guys, it's all about the community helping each other and learning from each other, really.
And one little thing that I'll plug in here too, that we should probably think about, BHA, a lot of people think automatically the West, but we're strong here in the East.
Yep,
and one of the things that we have that they don't have is seafood. And I saw your charred octopus the other day.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite. And we're going to have to come back to that.
Yeah, if you guys ever want to do a seafood one, I mean, I probably cook seafood just as much as I cook venison, really. I mean, right now my Instagram is just littered with octopus and scallops and shrimp and salmon. And it's a great time of year, especially living this close to the the coast, it's like I'm getting razor clams, I'm getting soft shell crab. I could go pescatarian. I mean, I'm just saying, I probably could. I mean, yeah.
Great. Well, you can give me those hunting spots if you're going to give that up.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night. Again, stay connected with Rich on Instagram. Stay connected with us, BHA, the New England Chapter BHA on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Our Facebook groups are pretty active. Get involved. And yes, thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, and if Chris, if you could get me those questions, I'd love to personally reach out to everybody on here who asked something, because just the fact that people signed up for this tonight is super humbling, and that people are willing to sit here and listen to me talk. You know, it really is. It's a great experience, and thanks again to the BHA and the New England BHA for having me. And and
pleasure. Our pleasure.
Thank you guys, and thank you to everyone here who's watching. And it's been great.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.